Hey guys, today I will be discussing the autonomy of women as seen in Things Fall Apart and the Yellow Wallpaper, particularly in family and in public. My argument is that in these stories, women are expected to be extremely passive and allow men in their lives to ultimately have the control, if not completely, then at least in part. And this is a problem because women should be able to have, at the very least, equal power as men do over their lives of themselves and their children. And they should be just as respected as men without having to be respected because of the men in their lives. So let's begin by contextualizing Things Fall Apart. This is a novel written by Chinua Achebe, who originated from a Nigerian Igbo village and immigrated to America. The story was published in 1958, which was about 50 years post-colonization of Africa. This is important because the setting of the story is pre-colonized Africa and the beginnings of colonization, so we must take it with a grain of salt how true the story's element could be. The specific setting is a Nigerian Igbo village, Umuofia, wherein masculinity was very important for a man to have, and women were given no political authority and held no public persona, but were known as their husbands' trophies. In reality, some Nigerian Igbo women were able to gain a political or public presence, but it was commonly because of their relationships to men, whether it be their brother, father, or husband, or they were appointed by the men. When it was not because of their relationships to men, it was usually in an age-based political system, wherein the elders held precedence. In this story, women had little control of their own lives, but they were given control to a certain extent. Within the families, each of these wives were given a hut on the husband's lands for themselves and their children, but they were still expected to put the husband's desires above their own. This can be seen in the quote about Ojuigo, the main character's youngest wife, who had forgotten to make Okonkwo, the main character's, dinner before she went out to get her hair done, and was beaten despite it being their week of peace. Okonkwo was punished by the village people not for beating his wife, but for being violent during the week of peace. A wife was expected to tend to the husband's needs before anything else, and if they didn't, it was basically a crime for which the husband could punish them in whatever way he saw fit, without fearing any consequences from the village. This instance was only one of many where Okonkwo beat one of his wives, and it was the only instance where he was punished for it. Women in public were seen to be less than men in the plainest sense, which led to their being placed aside as property or as trophies. An example of the daughters viewed as property is when Obiorika is marrying off his daughter to a man, and is described by the narrator as just ripe for marriage. She is then sold to her suitor for a large dowry, just as one may sell a farm animal. As for the wives, the amount of wives a man has is representative of how wealthy and successful he is. Nwakibi is seen to be very wealthy because he is able to support 9 wives and 30 children while maintaining 3 barns. Thus, women are specifically used as status symbols. The one exception to women's lack of power in the story is Chielo, a priestess of the god Agbala. At one point, she arrives asking for Azima in the night to take her to Agbala, and Ikwefi is kind of freaking out, but because of Chielo's status as a priestess, Okonkwo and Noi's mother reacted differently. The Yellow Wallpaper was written by Charlotte Perkins Gilman and published in 1892. During this time, there were 2 separate spheres for men and women, the sphere of domesticity for women and the public sphere for men. The married women at this time had no control of their medical care, and this became a problem, especially with mothers who suffered from postpartum depression, because it was not a recognized condition. They were instead diagnosed and treated for hysteria, a disease which was found only present in women. Gilman herself was diagnosed with a form of hysteria, but instead of following treatment, she ran away from home. In this story, the narrator has been diagnosed with temporary nervous depression, which was a hysterical tendency, and is being treated by seclusion. The first quote shows that the narrator doesn't really care what it is that they're giving her as treatment. And the fact that she is writing in a journal, which is one of the forbidden work things, shows that she really does not hold her husband and brother's treatment at a very high standard. The next quote talks about Jenny, who is an example of the ideal woman at the time. A well-kept woman who completes the household duties without complaint and without the desire for something else to do. The last quote is an example of the restriction placed on women at this time.
It explains all of the things that actually keep the narrator confined in the room, which are controlled by the husband's willingness to change them, which reflects the women's inability to make their decisions at this time and the husband's control over their lives. So you might be thinking, that's all horrible, but why do I care about it as a 21st century millennial who can't time travel? Well, gender inequality is still a huge problem, not only in the workplace, but also in relationships and education. This discrimination happens not only by men against women, but also by women against women and men against men. Despite this, an unfavorable trend that has been recognized recently is a thing called manterruption. Manterruption is interruptions made by men during a woman speaking, which has been found far more likely than interruptions made by men against men or by women generally. Once again, this is not to say that women are the only targets of discrimination. Men who do not fit the social expectations of man are also treated with less respect or belittled. We as a society need to try to eradicate these predisposed stereotypes and discrimination and see each person as they are and treat them as they are.